Welcome to this week's edition of the Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight, brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meigs Independent Press.
This is Carrie Rose, the Meigs Independent Press, and I'm here again this week for another episode of Community Spotlight, sponsored by Wheels and Deals. And I have with me today Robin Harris, who's the Executive Director of the Gallia Jackson Meigs Alcohol, Drug, Addiction, and Mental Health Board. And I also have Shannon Dalton, and she's a part of Outreach and working with the community on being able to address a lot of the different issues that the board works on. You commonly refer to as ADAMUS or Adam H board. I generally use ADAMUS because it's just easier to remember. But we talked last week about the campaign, Your Presence is a Present, and that's going to be going through the holidays, but also, you guys do all kinds of different things, and we're going to narrow it down a little bit to prevention because there's a lot of prevention things that you work on. One of the prevention things that people may be a little bit more of is the event that happens out at the Meigs County Fair.
Yes.
And that is a huge event that pulls together a whole lot of different entities in it, and that's going to be happening again. And my understanding is you guys are actually looking at taking that program and expanding that.
Meigs County was the first fair in the state of Ohio to dedicate a day to prevention. In combination with the work they do with kids and having a kids day. It was the brainchild of Sheriff Wood. My family happens to be very involved with the fair, so I actually was just out looking for food one day, and he stopped me and was talking. He had talked to a couple fair board members and said they had this idea, and since that naturally falls under what we do, we partnered with them and started this thing, and I think we just did the third one, I think, and I have to think back, third or fourth. But anyway, other county fairs are hearing about it and thinking it's a good idea. So our other two counties, Gallia and Jackson, are pursuing replicating that next year.
And it'll maybe look a little different this coming year, but going to be still there. Focus highly on the kids. It's part of the fair's Kids Day, and that's always fantastic. And the amount of work that goes into that is amazing. But there's other things that you guys do. So tell us a little bit about some of the prevention efforts that you have.
I'll let Shannon talk about the prevention coalition that exists here in Meigs County, and then I can go into some of the work in the schools.
So part of my role is as the community programming coordinator, which is probably a very long name for community outreach, as you so kindly put. I work with the community coalition. So each county has their own coalition that was initially set up to address the opioid epidemic, and has kind of since grown beyond that, or beyond just that single focus. So here in Meigs County, we have the Meigs County Prevention Coalition. They have been just this year got their first website through some grant funding and some work that they've been doing called the Community Coalition Action Theory, where they were all able to, as a coalition, go through and understand the process of what a coalition is, how the community is involved, and basically understand coalitions in general. And actually, it is to help. It was the whole purpose of this learning community that we were doing was to increase our membership. And so we've been able to engage in a lot more conversations in the community. Me being from Jackson, I haven't had the opportunity to be here in Meigs, but this has allowed me to get to know Meigs County a lot better, understand the history and how that impacts our prevention efforts, having that understanding of the culture of the area. I found, through my job, I have to treat each county differently. So it has been a wonderful experience. But the Meigs County Prevention Coalition, they typically meet. They were meeting in person. They're right now meeting virtually on Zoom and that is typically the third Wednesday of the month. So, well, it's third or fourth Wednesday. It just depends on what if we have
Right.
a holiday or something like that that comes around. But we tend to focus a lot on, offering supports for the recovery community here in Meigs County, trying to normalize that conversation with addiction, letting people know that that there is hope. We try to be the authority as far as giving the statistics and information out to the community. We provide resources, information. We have events like Drug Take Back Day, which was a huge
It was a
event
big
this
success
year.
here.
Has been a huge success. I think this year they got 141 pounds of prescription medications turned in.
Was that just here?
That was in Meigs County.
Yeah, that
yes.
was just in Meigs County.
That was just in Meigs County
So at the one location,
at the one location.
at the Holzer Meigs emergency department, 141 pounds of pills were taken off the street, out of the area, from people's homes, so that they can't be used by somebody else. There's no way it's going to get into the hands
Right.
of someone with an addiction problem.
And in addition to that, I can say that Meigs County has been probably one of the best counties as far as distributing Deterra drug deactivation bags. We have them often available through the health department, through like the Drug Take Back Days, through some other events. But what those bags do is you just take your pills, you empty them into this bag, add some water, shake it up, and you can throw it away in your trash. It's environmentally safe. It's a great way to deactivate those over-the-counter meds that you don't want people, or over-the-counter or prescription meds that you don't want people to get hold of. And that is a big focus that the Prevention Coalition works on. Of course, the youth. That is their heart, is those youth programs. And I'm actually gonna.
That's my segue.
That's your segue.
So much of the work in prevention, especially with substance use, of course, focuses on kids, and usually programs take place in schools. Most of young adults, anyway, in this area have grown up with Rockin' Reggie. Reggie works through a contract we have with Health Recovery Services, and it's hard to know sometimes when Reggie's working and when he isn't, because he's always rocking Reggie
is always
and
rocking Reggie.
always engaged in prevention. He keeps threatening to retire, and it just
I
can't
don't
happen.
know. I don't know.
So
I don't know if we
you
could
know,
have
so
that
many,
happen.
many kids and many of the adults now remember having Reggie in their schools, and I remember when there were dances at the fair on Saturday night, and Reggie would do that. But most of our work is in engaging kids at the schools, and in rural communities like we have here, that's where we find kids. I mean, there are transportation issues, there's a lot of geography that's sparsely populated. So, if we want to reach kids in significant numbers, of course, we're going into the schools. And in recent years here in Meigs County, we began to problem solve with the schools, maybe not so much on substance abuse prevention, although it does have a role, but in preventing behavioral issues. And issues maybe related to more toward mental health or mental illness and some of those sorts of things with kids. The schools were interested in intervening early. They were seeing signs of kids entering kindergarten somewhat troubled, and kindergarten teachers could see that. And so it started with a conversation with Scott Geen, the superintendent at Meigs Local, and of course, as we do things here in Meigs County, the other two districts were in quite easily. We often just meet all three together. And but I met with them, and then I sat down with principals and elementary school principals, and then the conversation continued, and I sat with kindergarten teachers, which was an eye-opener for me. Even though I thought I really had my finger on the pulse of what was happening. Sitting with kindergarten teachers, and I have to say it was about March, so they were approaching the end of the school year, or it was in sight. And sitting and talking to these teachers, and I looked over, and one had a tear trickling down her cheek, a sense of I'm failing. I can't
terrible.
reach these certain kids, and I've been with them all of these months, and we're struggling against something that I don't know what to do. So I had to take that back. I'm not the world expert. You know, I'm a trained mental health clinician, but, you know, I don't know all of these things. And so I began to pull in resources. There's a lady who does the early childhood programs at Hopewell Health Centers. Her name's Erin Lucas, and she's absolutely wonderful. Sat down and talked to her about it, and we began to look at current research about trauma and about how the development of a child's brain is affected by traumatic situations. And when you define trauma in the life of a young child, it may not be a dramatic, you know, car accident or things that we tend to think of as
right.
trauma. For a young child, it's angry adults yelling at one another. It's not having enough food. It's hearing conversations about, do we have to move again? It's mommy or daddy involved in substance use and I'm afraid, and somebody has died or somebody's been arrested. Those sorts of things create a change in the development of the child's brain. And so children who have been through many, many difficult circumstances will enter kindergarten really unable to sit down and attend to being taught, really unable to sit quietly. Their brain has their body so geared in a defensive response to everything. And so the more we've began, you know, to really understand that, then we see that some of the behaviors that are happening with kids, where we see kids who are defiant toward adults, rather than we're thinking this child should be respectful. That's disrespect, and we've started to understand that it may not be disrespect as much as it's, you're not going to get me. They're in a defense mode because their life isn't safe. Their brain tells them life isn't safe. I've got to always be in the mode to protect myself. And so as we began to look at the behavior of children through that lens, that's not to excuse bad behavior.
Right.
We are not about excusing things that need to be dealt with through disciplinary action or whatever needs to happen. But it's understanding those kids who do not seem to respond to consequences, who do not seem to respond to being maybe redirected in their behavior, and teachers were struggling with that. So we partnered up. We started with Meg's Local. We're now in all 3 districts, partnering up, sending mental health professionals on site in the buildings to train and teach and model and help. Not just go in and say, here's a 2-hour course all about trauma, here's your book, go do great things. We've all done that. We've all attended a seminar somewhere and thought, this is wonderful. And when you got back to work on Monday, you were like,
How do I actually implement this? What do I do with it? Yeah.
So instead, we have our people in the buildings every day, just coming alongside the teachers and helping with situations and helping create. And the school districts have embraced this beautifully. It makes sense to them, and they're integrating these concepts into their curriculum, into their disciplinary procedures, into classroom situations. It makes sense. And, we fully expect years down the road, it takes a while to change things.
Yes.
But as we engage the community and engage families in understanding what traumatizes a child, we believe that we're going to make great inroads into how all of us approach how children grow up in our communities. Meigs County was the first county in the state of Ohio to implement Handle with Care, which is a system by which schools are alerted when a child has had a traumatic event the night before. Nothing to point that child out. The child is not singled out in any way, but the teachers keep a special eye on the child in case they show that they have needs that day.
And that's specifically you're looking at if there's been an interaction with law enforcement.
Law enforcement, EMS, children's services.
so that way the teacher isn't going in blind and trying to educate this child, and they just saw mommy put on the
punishment
squad,
for not
or
turning your homework in.
right, or punishment for not turning your homework in because they just saw mommy put on the squad last night, or maybe
I've
put,
seen
put
teachers
or maybe put in the
brokenhearted
back
at
of
the end of the day.
yeah, or maybe put in the back of a squad car.
I've seen teachers brokenhearted because they disciplined a child and then later learned what had
And
happened
they didn't
with the
know.
child.
So this is a much more holistic look at being able to educate the
And
children.
Meigs County's been
Wow.
a leader in this. Across the state, people look at the model we've developed here, and I'm very proud of that.
That's amazing. There's so many things we can talk about.
Yes.
Now, if somebody wants to get a hold of you guys, how do they do that? If they want more information about your services, what's the best way?
Well,
web-
I was going to say the website for sure, which is www.gjmboard.org.
Okay.
You can actually also like and follow us on Facebook. It's again the GJM board. So you just look for the Gallia Jackson Meigs Adam board, and you should be able to locate us there. We have, of course, calling the office. That's
740-446-3022.
Okay. So there's so many different things, and definitely want to have you back to talk about some more. If you're not aware of some of these things, make sure you check out their website, look at their Facebook page. We'll be having this conversation again in the future on some of the things that you do. But sometimes we always think that Meigs County is getting left behind, or that we're not proactive with things. And I have to say, you're very proactive.
Yes.
And
we're proud of Meigs County.
And trying to do the best. And again, I mean, you're up in Columbus all the time fighting for us, and I think that's in making sure that our experience in Appalachia is heard in Columbus, and our needs here. So just amazing things are happening, and again, I want to brag about the fact that we have somebody from Meigs County that does that, because we always like to think that there isn't something happening beyond, it's other people. It's not Meigs County people making a difference, and it is.
If I've made a name for myself in Columbus at all, it's that people have come to count on me to say, now wait a minute, that might be working well, but in rural counties we need in southern Ohio, we need. In Appalachia, we do it this way. And we really focus on being proud of
Absolutely.
Appalachia. And, I was speaking up one day about something, and I said, what are you going to do for the families in Appalachia? And this man answered, oh, we're going to study poverty. And I said, no. Poverty may be a factor in Appalachia, but it is not who we are.
Mm-hmm.
It does not define us. It affects us, but it does not define us.
Mm-hmm.
We have strengths in this culture. And so it's important to me that is respected as we make plans, that our voice is respected and our culture is respected.
Absolutely.
And their strengths are at the table.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you're working for our side of things down here. And very happy to have had both of you on today, and looking forward to talking to you again in the future. And this is Carrie Rose with Meigs Independent Press, and another episode of Wheels and Deals Community Spotlight. We'll be back again next week. You never know what we're going to find, but what we're going to be talking about. But make sure that you check us out.
This week's Community Spotlight is brought to you by Wheels and Deals of Pomeroy and the Meigs Independent Press.